Welcome back. We now have Roger Spink, who is returning again to stand for election for Stanley. And Roger, what skills? I mean, we know you have various skills, but what skills do you bring to the new assembly, and what portfolios would you like to take on?
I think after 30 years of being in industry at a reasonably high level, and also having been chair of the Chamber of Commerce, central services, which includes the Treasury, etc., and legal services and regulation. That was my portfolio this last time.
Yeah.
It would probably be my preference this time, but it all depends on which 8 people get in and what the skill set is of those people. So, I'd be quite comfortable in trade and industry or development commercial services as well. And I think it really is a matter of putting together the best team that we can if I'm lucky enough to be elected with the other elected members.
What are the main issues you think are going to be addressed by the new assembly? There's quite a few things passed over, of course.
Of course, yes, and the major one is the capital projects. We have a 10-year capital plan that needs to be looked at and reviewed. The port obviously is the big item on there. That is, I believe, a very, very important issue for the islands, where Fipass is about to drop into the sea, and it's vital. It's the lifeblood of the islands, and I think that has to be a priority. And the financing of it as well will be important. But if we want to borrow money, it's a matter of what else do we wish to do at the same time. I think we could probably do the port, but we wouldn't be doing an awful lot of other things at the same time. And the financing depends on how much we can borrow money for. If we can borrow it at an advantageous rate that is less than the amount of money that we're getting for our reserves, the rate of return that we're getting for our reserves, then it makes sense to borrow money for it. And this isn't something that is new to the islands. The tank farm for Stanley Services that was built on loaned money that was guaranteed by the Falkland Islands government way back then.
That's right, true. When first elected, members are very aware of, through the hustings and such like, very aware of the opinion of the electorate. How do you keep in touch with that once if you're elected? How do you manage to keep in touch with the opinion? Facebook's been used, but it's been used as a soapbox.
Yes, Facebook is one tool, but I think there are other methods. We have monthly meetings. We go out to camp. The camp meetings are very, very informative, and we have a lot of people turning up for those, and they're great to go out to. Stanley has been less successful. We've had meetings with people like the Chamber of Commerce. I go out and I meet with various businesses. I go and have a cup of coffee or whatever with them and talk with them on a regular basis to find out how they see life. But we need to look at other community organisations and be talking with those people to find out their views on things within the community.
Right, yes, thank you. One of the most common issues discussed by the electorate at this time is the salmon farm. This could be a valuable industry to the Falklands, but there are also warnings of serious problems of pollution coupled with the same industry. Do you have any comments?
I think the salmon farming lobby or anti-salmon farming lobby have been very successful and very concise in putting their arguments forwards on the environmental dangers of salmon farming. But there is a process that we have to go through, I think, to make a decision on salmon farming, and I think we should do that and go through that process at an early stage, because I think there's an awful lot of time and effort and obviously angst within the community about salmon farming, and I think we need to reach a conclusion on it. I have grave concerns about the environmental cost of salmon farming and whether or not the economic benefits would even get anywhere near to outweighing the environmental costs. So therefore, I think we need to make an early decision, and we need to then spend more time on, I think, more fruitful areas such as carbon credits, such as renewable energy, and we can put our efforts into things that I think will bear fruit for the islands in the future.
Communications, internet speeds have become quite a large issue for a lot of people.
Yes.
Particularly people in camp. How can the Falklands receive the same quality of services that are expected around the world?
I was at a very good presentation by Justin McPhee of Shaw last Friday at the Chamber of Commerce. where the Chamber Justin Shaw and in conjunction with the government are moving forwards with a tender process to look at different methods of delivery of the internet into the islands. And that tender process, once we get the results back on that tender process, I think he was hopeful, and I think we should be hopeful that working with Shaw, that we can provide a better service to everybody in the islands. But obviously that will depend on the results of that tender process.
Yes, obviously. Climate change is becoming a major issue around the world, and it cannot be ignored. What steps should the Falklands take to make the islands more carbon neutral? Given that renewable energy has developed considerably in the recent years, would you support the development of a new power station mainly based on renewables?
I think at the moment the reason the power station is being developed on the basis of engines is that when the sun doesn't shine and when the wind doesn't blow, there was perceived to be a requirement for engines as a backup to that, and that any design is supposed to have the ability to plug in extra wind and also solar power. I'm actually following very closely the Orkney Islands, where they're doing a lot of development in the production of hydrogen from wind through the generation of electricity with wind, and then they produce hydrogen. They actually run a ferry and they run buses there on it. I'm not sure the technology is there yet for us to be able to use that to store energy, but I think in the near future we need to look at what the options are on that. And I also believe that the Development Corporation should be re-looking at the grants that they give for wind energy, alternative energy in camp. It needs an upgrade and it needs a look at, because if someone had a grant 10 years ago or whatever and then they've sold the farm to someone else, they still don't qualify for a grant. It doesn't make sense to me.
No. Falkland Conservation produced a document saying 2021 election, getting a green vote, laying ideas for the green elections. You're very much involved with Falklands Conservation, so obviously
I
you're
have to
very
declare an
aware
interest as the chair of Falklands Conservation.
But
yes.
would you like to enlarge on that?
No, I think the environment has become very, very front and central to everybody's view of life. I think that we can have development whilst we care for the environment, and I think there's a lot of work being done on carbon credits, which I think are a way of actually generating money for landowners in the Falklands, restoring the land as well. I think our agricultural practices perhaps in the past have actually encouraged overgrazing and rewarded people for that, whereas our grant schemes perhaps should actually take into account the effect on the land, and perhaps we should pay people to keep less sheep and graze less, because I think some of these things are dictated by your policies within government.
Yes, I can see that. There's been recent criticism of the fact that pensions still fall well below the living wage. In view of the fact that throughout their working years, many of the present pensioners did not have policies that they could take up, and those who did, the incomes are derisory. For those who, how should this be addressed?
Well, I think there's just recently been a report. I mean, it's a concern across the world because of actuarial rates of return for people with pensions have been a problem. There is an organisation called the Pensions Lifetime and Savings Association, who've just done a report with Loughborough University, which has set the amount of money every year that people should have to have a low level of income, medium and higher level of income. So it sets out savings goals that people should have. And I think we need to make sure that our state pension covers the minimum requirements for people in retirement. We also need to make sure, and perhaps we may need to mandate, that people are provided with a pension scheme and a savings scheme and automatically enrolled perhaps as employees so that they do save for their pensions. The other thing that we have done and that is in process at the moment is you'll see an EXCO paper was passed towards the end of the last Assembly for the Attorney General to start preparing the legislation for pensions drawdown, which means that people wouldn't have to necessarily purchase an annuity. They would be able to live off the capital and the interest that they have in their pension fund that they built up over the years. And for smaller sums, they can get the lump sum, which perhaps a lot of them can do something with to earn some extra income.
That's all we find for the future. My question was, the pensions now are falling well below the
Yes.
living wage.
Sorry,
How should that be addressed?
Yes, the pension, the level of the pension, at the time, we have an actuary coming down to look at the pension fund in the early part of next year. And as part of that exercise, we need to look at what the minimum amount of money is required for pensioners to be able to live off. That was done the last time round in 2017, and it needs to be done this time round as well. Obviously, we can use the figures that Loughborough University supplied, but we need to actually Falklandise them because the figures are based on UK costs of living, not on the Falklands. And that, I think, is quite a quick and easy way of making sure that we provide for old people in their retirement.
It's been suggested that members spend too much time overseas travelling and such like, and not enough time dealing with local issues. Do you have any comment on this?
Well, to a certain extent, I agree. Yeah, I think we should minimise the amount of time. I mean, there are important issues that we have to go away, yes. and certainly I think the C24 is an important one. The JMC is an important meeting. But there does tend to be too many meetings that people travel to, really, which I don't see anything coming back and any benefit to the Falklands from it. I think we need to concentrate, certainly a lot of our public diplomacy money, on bringing people to the islands to find out about the islands. And it also means that MLAs then are on site in the islands to deal with the issues that people have. And it would save the islands an awful lot of money in airfares and everything else that we can spend on other things, such as pensioners.
Yes, that sounds fine.
Yes.
Housing seems to be a problem area. Can you see ways to get the lower paid able to get on the housing ladder, particularly now as the cost of building plots is going up and they can't get enough money to actually build a house, even if they can afford to buy a plot? In
my last election manifesto, Richard, you'll see that I wish to sell off old government housing at discounted rates to existing tenants. That's one way of getting people into this. We've actually finally, at the end of 4 years, managed to get it into the housing strategy. If elected, I would be pushing at an early stage to get that put into practice.
I'm afraid your time's all up now, so we have to stop the cameras.